Scream 7 is passing 100 million at the box office, and I kind of just want to put my initial thoughts out there. And I won't disclose how I saw Scream 7, but I will say it wasn't my favorite in the franchise. And it's weird because normally I would put Scream 3 as my least favorite in the franchise, but honestly, this movie might tie it. However, that doesn't mean I think the film is bad. To give a general overview, Ghostface returns, he's coming for Sidney Prescott and her family, and we get other returning characters as well. However, we sadly don't get Sam or Tara Carpenter, played by Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega, and I do not agree with the firing of Melissa Barrera for this project, and shortly after Melissa was fired, Jenna Ortega left as well. But we do get Mindy and Chad returning for this film, and I love their role in this film. I actually think it's a really cool direction for their characters, and I am about to get into some spoilers, so this is your warning. I think it's super cool that we see Mindy and Chad helping out Gale Weathers, and the dynamic that all three of them have going on in this film, I really enjoyed. One of my biggest fears for this film was that Mindy and Chad were going to just be sacrificial lambs. I was so worried that they were going to be killed in the beginning of this film just to set up that this Ghostface is really ruthless. So I was relieved that they actually ended up making it through this film. And speaking of side characters, we get Joel McHale who plays Mark. No, not Mark Kincaid, although this Mark is with Sydney and they're actually married and they have a daughter. And I guess he took her last name and she started going by Sydney Evans, or his name is just Mark Evans and she took his last name. That's not really important. But there's a shot that they show in the trailer of him being wrapped up in a tarp and being stabbed. And I really thought that they were just spoiling one of the kills for this film. I don't know how he does it, but this man is an absolute trooper in this movie. When we get the home invasion with Carl, the first Ghostface that is revealed in this film, he just absolutely takes it to him. And even when he's beaten and bruised, he is putting up a fight. And for some reason, they allow him to live, which I'm not sure why both the Ghostface killers allowed him to live until the final act, but we'll get into that in a second. I walked out of this movie thinking that Mark was most likely the unsung hero of the film. We get Isabel May, who plays Tatum Evans, otherwise known as Sydney's daughter, and she is incredible in the film, and her motives in the film seem very realistic. Her mother went through traumatic stuff her entire life, and Tatum just wants to know how her mother did it and how she can be a fighter like her mom. And so now let's talk about Sydney, who's returning and doesn't want to talk to Tatum about any of this stuff. And rightfully so, because everything about Sydney's life has either been written in a book or seen in film. Sydney even gets slightly triggered when Tatum wears the same jacket she had in Scream 2, and it definitely triggers some emotions, which I really liked about this film. I like that we get throwbacks and ties and references to the other Scream movies. And before I move on, I want to talk about Courtney Cox's portrayal of Gale Weathers in this installment of the Scream franchise. It's really cool to see how she's moved on from Dewey, as well as the events of Scream 6 and being able to talk about why Sydney didn't go to New York and how she's okay with it. And we do see that Gale still has trouble talking about Dewey and trying to move on. Also, Gale has an MVP entrance in this film running over Ghostface. When I was watching it, it definitely gave me Scary Movie 1 type of vibes, but Gale is once again another unsung hero of Scream 7. And now let's get into one of the big things. Stu Macher. Matthew Lillard returns to Scream 7. Was it worth it? This was the most disappointing thing in this film. It was so disappointing, and I think a lot of people could probably figure it out that it wasn't actually Stu Macher. When they were announcing everybody that was going to return for this film, they also mentioned Scott Foley, who, if you don't know, is Roman Bridger in Scream 3. And anybody that remembered that he was actually cast in this movie would have been like, wow, where is Scott Foley in this film? I haven't seen him the entire time. And you don't see Roman until the very end when it's switching between different people from Sydney's past. And it's revealed that this entire time, Stu has just been an AI deepfake. I don't know how this is going to age in time. I do think AI is a good talking point and it can be used very well within the Scream franchise given how meta the movies are. I just don't think that this was the right type of movie for it to be done. AI is such a real threat nowadays. I just don't think it should have been used in Scream 7. They basically just straight up honey dicked us. The general census that I've gotten from many people that have seen this film is that everything in this film is great except for the killer reveal. They were just waving it in front of our face that Stu might be alive, and we've been wanting this for so long. They teased it in Scream 5, they teased it again in Scream 6, and in this film it looked like we were finally going to get the return of Stu Macher. One of the taglines for this film is "Face Your Past." The opening takes place at the Macher house, and they're even talking about Stu Macher possibly being alive. And yet the version of Stu Macher that we get in this film is just AI. It's either Marco or Jessica playing as Stu Macher. Speaking of which, let's talk about Marco and Jessica in this film. Anna Camp plays Jessica, who is neighbors with Sydney, and her son is actually within the theater group, so kind of knows Tatum, Sydney's daughter. And Anna Camp has gone on record and said that she really didn't have that much to work with within the film itself, and that she had to make up lore, and that initially it was only the scene with Sydney at the coffee shop in the beginning, and then the killer reveal. And then we talk about Marco, who is played by Ethan Embry, story. I loved him in Vegas Vacation. I loved him in Sweet Home Alabama. I'm totally a Mark. And he only has 2 scenes in this film. Timothy Simons, who plays George, the drama teacher at Tatum School, has more scenes than Marco. And Marco's really only there to assist Jessica. That's it. He just has a lot of knowledge within AI, and so he wanted to make Sydney face her past. And so Marco helps bring back Stu Macher in what Stu Macher may look like if he was still alive today. And Jessica's whole motive is that she's upset that Sydney settled down, that she didn't go to New York to help fight another Ghostface battle. Jessica feels like not only did Sydney turn her back on her, but any survivor that is looked up or connected to Sidney Prescott's story. And so she wants to put Sydney back in the spotlight. According to Kevin Williamson, these motives were to showcase parasocial relationships, the feeling that fans are entitled to something just because they support a celebrity, which is a very real thing because there are people out there like autograph hunters who seek celebrities and act entitled like they are owed an autograph to resell on eBay. Or just recently, there was a panel that Keke Palmer was at and she was actually proposed to by somebody that she just doesn't know, some random fan.
I got this!
And so I will say, I think this motive actually would have worked, but I do believe that they went about it the entirely wrong way. They brought back a fan favorite character in Stu Macher just to nostalgia bait us into going to see the film, and I know a lot of people did not like that. This motive totally could have worked if you didn't give us Stu Macher, and if you just gave us more scenes with Jessica and Marco.
There were less scenes that you saw in the movie in the script draft.
Not to mention the other Ghostface killer in this movie, which is Carl. We really only get 2 scenes with him, one where he's at the coffee shop, which Jessica's at the same exact time. And then sometime after the coffee shop, he somehow snuck into Sydney's home, which had me thinking, are you really going to tell me that Sidney Prescott has so many locks in her home, and she has a secret panic room and can actually travel throughout the walls, but she doesn't have a doorbell camera? Like, how did he get in the house, and how was he able to hide in the attic? And that whole home invasion sequence was actually amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed him as Ghostface within that sequence, and I really enjoyed how much Mark was fighting for Sydney and Tatum. I was also worried that when he hit his head falling down the stairs that Mark was dead, but thank God he got up. But then after putting up a really good fight with Mark, he's just hit by a car. Carl is just hit by Gale Weathers and he's dead. It wouldn't surprise me if years down the line people forget that there is a third Ghostface in this movie, because Carl just wasn't a memorable character. And for a Ghostface that only has 1 scene, when you look at Carl's Ghostface next to somebody like Jason from Scream 6, Jason is leagues better. But the character of Carl did put up a fight, and I will give him that. Another thing that was really important with this film were going to be the kills, which the kills and the stabbing has always gotten better as the films have gone on. When you make the jump from Scream 1 to Scream 2, we had more bloodier kills in Scream 2, both with Randy in the van as well as Dewey in the studio. Yes, I know Dewey obviously didn't die, but there was a lot of blood on that window. Then you move on to Scream 3, where we had the fake out death of Roman with a bunch of blood, as well as the literal explosion. Scream 4 had some really crazy kills too, especially with Allison Brie's character getting tossed off the parking garage onto the ambulance, as well as the scene where Jill just straight up goes crazy and starts fight clubbing herself. Then Scream 5 has some pretty crazy kills, with Liv getting shot straight in the forehead, Amber being set on fire, and Richie just getting stabbed a million times. Then we go to Scream 6, and every kill in Scream 6 is actually phenomenal. From Annika to the therapist to Detective Bailey, Quinn, they all had amazing kills and stabs in Scream 6. And this film starts off with a bang at the Macher house, where it seems like people are theorizing that this is Marco at the beginning of the film as Ghostface, where he ends up stabbing and killing Scott. Then Madison falls from the chandelier onto Ghostface's knife, but she lives, only to see Ghostface with a jerry can beginning to burn down the Macher house. She is then, you guessed it, burned alive. This was a long opening sequence, and oh my god, was it worth it. This was one of the best kills in the entire franchise. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's an opening kill, and to top an opening kill is a hard thing to do. But when you have Ghostface burning people alive, that kind of ups the ante. I was watching this actively going, holy shit, I can't believe that's happening. Then we get the attack at the high school, where the theater program is doing rehearsals for the play, and we get 2 kills here, with Hannah being one of the victims. I thought McKenna Grace was doing great in this film, and I was really hoping she would have lasted until the end at least. But she is stabbed a couple times, and then she is just sliced, and her guts go everywhere. I really wish they hadn't shown this kill in the trailers, but they did. Nonetheless, it is still a very cool kill. Then we get Chloe and Lucas dying at the bar. Lucas initially tries to fight Ghostface by himself before being stabbed. Then Chloe almost gets away, but she thinks Ghostface leaves the bar, and of course Ghostface doesn't. Grabbing Chloe, then sliding her across the bar through glasses, where she falls and the glass impales her neck. Lucas, however, isn't dead at this point, and so Ghostface goes over there and picks up Lucas, and from his head impales him with a beer tab, where his head slides down, his jaw opens, and beer and blood come gushing out of his mouth. Which maybe I'm biased because I like Asa Gurman from The Boys and Gen V, but this kill is definitely my top 5 and maybe my favorite kill in the entire Scream franchise. It is so over the top and graphic, which I think it has to be in this day and age of horror. Scream has always been very meta, and they've always had their finger on the pulse for what's going on in the world of horror, whether that's reboots or requels or knowing the horror tropes. And right now, people are going to see the Terrifier movies because they show a lot of gore. The kills are so over the top in the Terrifier films, and that's exactly what this one was. And what makes this even crazier is that we know that this is actually Lucas's mom. The Ghostface that stabs Mindy and Chad at the bar, as well as killing Chloe and killing Lucas, is Jessica. And right after this kill, we get Tatum running away from Ghostface once again. At this point, she suspects that her boyfriend Ben may be Ghostface and may be the killer. Ben ends up catching up to Tatum, but shortly after is stabbed not only in the neck but also the stomach and dies. We know that this Ghostface killer is Marco, and then eventually Marco and Jessica are able to knock out Tatum and take her back to Sydney's house. And this is where the movie falls apart for a lot of people. We get Marco revealing that he's been using Stu Macher AI the whole time, and he has Tatum tied up like Steve from Scream 1 out on the porch. Then he reveals Jessica as the other Ghostface killer. They reveal that Mark is still alive after being stabbed multiple times, which honestly is a miracle that he hasn't bled out by this point. However, during the entire monologue, Mark's able to free Tatum. Sydney shoots Marco in the face. He's dead. And Sydney ends up chasing Jessica throughout this part of their home that's being remodeled. Tatum shoots Jessica, but it's not in the face, so of course Jessica lives. Then Tatum and Sydney are hunting down Jessica together, and they shoot her in the face a total of 27 times. Once again, giving in to the whole Terrifier over-the-top killing thing. They shoot her so much that her face actually falls off. And the ending of the movie, we get Gail reconciling with Sydney, and Sydney forgiving Gail after all these years, as well as Sydney opening up to Tatum about her past, and how Tatum was her best friend as a child, and so that's why Tatum has the name she has. She felt like her friend in her teenage years, Tatum, played by Rose McGowan, was such a fighter, and she wanted that for her daughter. And so the movie ends on that, and I think that's actually a great way to end the film. I see a lot of people absolutely hating this film online, and I wouldn't even say that the hate is warranted. I would say criticisms are. For example, let's not tease a return of a character that people have loved for 30 years just for it to be revealed that it's AI. Like I said earlier, it just got a lot of hopes up that we were finally going to get Stu Macher back. And I like the fact that Matthew Lillard has actually kind of voiced his displeasure with the film, not directly citing if he likes or dislikes the film, but saying that it sets up the return of Stu Macher in a great way.
Thrilled to be back. And everyone's recording it, so I can't really tell anyone what I really want to say. I think that they did a great job setting up that Stu is still alive. Oh my God. So I've already said, everyone's like, this is a good opportunity for Stu to come back, and I'm just going to keep campaigning that Stu is still alive. I'm campaigning for it. I've always been campaigning for it. They did nothing but add to the legacy that Stu is still alive. Yeah. Setting up Stu to stalk her the entire film changes the dynamic of the film, and I don't think that's necessarily bad.
And I've actually been thinking about what a Scream 8 or Scream 9 could look like, so let me know if you want to see that down in the comments. But I do think that we could get Matthew Lillard back as Stu Macher, and if they bring Matthew Lillard back for another film, I just wouldn't announce it. Because at this point, if we're going off the rules of horror, he has to come back in Scream 9. Scream 7 would set it up, Scream 8 would be a different plot, and then Scream 9 would be the end of this new trilogy, where we know anything can happen in the third installment of a trilogy, and none of the characters are safe. Overall, I think Scream 7 is fine. I think it's a solid maybe 6.5, 7 out of 10. And I'd be very curious to see what somebody who's never seen a singular Scream movie, if they were to just sit down and binge watch 1 through 7, what would they think about it? Having not seen the marketing for this film and not knowing that Stu Macher possibly could be in this movie, would they enjoy it more? But overall, those are my thoughts. I think it's a great film up until the killer reveal, and then that's kind of where it falls off. It just doesn't stick the landing, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. Let me know what you think about Scream 7 down in the comments below. Be sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, and subscribe if you want to see more like it. These videos can take a lot of time to make, and sometimes the algorithm just doesn't push it, but if it's something that I know people want, I'll absolutely be trying to make more content like it. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.